presenter is Luis Garcia, currently at eBay, and he is going to have a great introduction to the crash course into accessibility tools and learning more about how to test for web accessibility. Thank you, Luis.
Thank you very much, Thomas, for that introduction. So I'm Luis Garcia. I'm a product manager over at eBay, but I'm not here just real quick disclaimer. I'm not here representing eBay. I'm just presenting on my own. If you want, you can find me on Twitter at Garcialo. And this is the slide deck URL. Let me make this a little bit bigger in case anybody wants to follow along. I would encourage people to follow along if they really want to, because there are some resources on here that I'm not going to be talking about, but there's links to where you can download each of the tools I'm talking about, everything else. And I'll go ahead and say the URL. So it's www.garcialo.com/2016/A11YNYC/tools. I'll go ahead and say that one more time. www.garcialo.com/2016/A11YNYC/tools. All right. So really quickly, what we're going to go over today, since we have 30 minutes. So I started a while back and wanted to kind of evaluate a bunch of the tools that are available for doing automated testing of accessibility. And so I started with the Web Accessibility Initiative for the W3. They have a giant list of evaluation tools. I went through that and found ones that were free, easy to use, fairly robust, and would do local analysis. So the free meaning you don't have to pay for it. Easy to use meaning you click a button and it gives you results. Fairly robust means that the tool's not just going to fall over or crash if you're scanning a large page or lots of pages. And then local analysis meaning that you don't need to have internet access. Like everything you need is inside the tool itself. Doesn't need to phone home or make a call to something else. You can do all the testing if you're on a corporate network. You're behind the craziest firewall. If you just don't have internet access, you can do the testing. So these are the 4 tools that we're going to talk about today. So Wave, Axe, the accessibility developer tools, and A-Inspector. So we're going to start with Wave. Wave is usually people's first accessibility testing tool. And there's a lot, this is a lot of information on here. Peruse it on your own. I just kind of want to give you a brief introduction, and then we're going to jump into hey, we're going to use this tool. So this is Wave. So there's information here does the tool provide issue explanations? It does. Does it provide suggestions on how to fix the issues that it finds? Yes, it does. You can check pages behind login. They do lots of visual indication of where the errors occur on the page. Custom checking. So there's section 508. There's WCAG. There's different levels of WCAG. Can you customize how the testing is being done? And then report shareability, meaning it gives me this information as output. Can I easily give this to somebody else to work on? And Wave, no. Most of these tools are going to have no for the report shareability, just so you know. Just mentioning it now. I'm not going to harp too much on the table in the future. Here are just my quick thoughts on it before we jump into using the tool. The Wave tool, it scans pages, gives you results, but it goes beyond WCAG, and it goes beyond the standards. It'll give you some best practices related to accessibility. So it'll check for things that are small text, justified text, underlined text, lots of other stuff. And then it does more than just a check, so you can get a page outline of the page, which I'll show you. You can disable the styles, which I'll also show you, that kind of stuff. And it can be visually noisy, which you will see, but you can customize how busy it gets. So let's just jump to this example. So here we have the before and after demo. This is a page put out by the W3's Web Accessibility Initiative. And it's kind of here's a bad site for accessibility so that you can go and find the issues on this page. So let's just go ahead and run Wave. So I've installed Wave in Chrome, and it shows up as this W up here in the top right. Hopefully you can see it. And so I click it, and it's going to run the report. You see over here the results are on the left. So here's a summary of the results. And here in the middle, it's filled up my page with all sorts of information. And this is content as to what the errors are. So well, how do I know what these errors are? Just a whole bunch of things. Well, if you're a mouse user, you can go and click on it. It'll give you a little pop-up saying, oh, this image is missing alternative text. And hey, this is a possible heading. It's not a heading though, right? Like, this is a possible heading, gives you information about it. Over here on the left side, you can also kind of like go through all the alerts that it possibly has. And so I was saying is visually noisy. You can go and uncheck any of these, and it'll kind of you'll remove all those from the page. But all the stuff that the Wave finds, there's really good stuff. Issues that you're going to want to fix most likely. Like there's probably a couple of like edge cases where it's like, it's not that big of a deal if you make this change or not. But for the most part, these are at the very least best practices or issues you want to, you want to take what Wave says and probably do it. And Wave is a lot of people's, like I said, first accessibility testing tool. It's really great. Oh yeah, if anybody has any questions, feel free and just blurt them out. I'm just gonna kind of do stuff. And so in addition to the, you push a button and it gives you all these results and all this information, tells you things you can fix on the page. You can say no styles, which is up here on the top, and it'll remove, let me check this too. So there's less stuff showing up. So this is the page without any CSS displayed on it, right? So no kind of like special styling. So if you wanted to check for that, you could do that. If you want to get like what's the outline of this page, that's this one. If you want to get the outline of the page, you can click on this thing. And right now it only has one heading, the H1 on it. When we go to if we went to like a good page, we'd see more information of like what the actual page outline is. Yeah. Okay. So that's the Wave tool. We're going to quickly go through this. If you want me to slow down, sorry. All right. So the next tool we're going to do is Axe. This is a really good tool. It's put out by a company called DeQ. The previous tool, Wave, that's put out by WebAIM, who was mentioned earlier in a presentation. Okay, so this is Axe. So it's put out by DeQ. The best thing about Axe, here's all the information if you want to download it. It's available both on Firefox and on Chrome. We're going to be looking at it today on Firefox. Even though right now I'm on Chrome, we'll go over to Firefox. So the best thing about Axe is that they have the principle of no false positives. So a lot of the testing tools, the pitfalls that they're going to have is that judgment calls need to be made by a human. And so in some cases, the tools are going to over-report things and say, oh, here's an issue, but it might not actually be an issue. So in all those cases where it's questionable whether something might be an issue or not, I don't know if this is exactly what Axe does, but they seem to just kind of ignore it. Right? So if there's like a questionable thing, they're saying we're not even going to question whether or not it's an issue, we're just going to report things that we know are issues. So Axe is a great tool for beginners, which I think a lot of people in this room probably are. So Axe is a great tool for that because just no false positives, just these are things that are actually issues. The UI is a little clunky because it's very, kind of like my presentation. It's very meat and potatoes, very simple. You can't customize your checks, so you can't say like, oh, I only want to check for section 508 or I only want to check for WCAG AA. They have the checks that Act runs, and that's all you get. Right now, it doesn't really work with in Firefox private browsing mode. There's different rationalizations for why you might want to do that. I'm not going to go into them, but they have recently fixed it. It's just not pushed out to the plugin yet. So I'm going to have to remove that eventually once it starts working. Potential fusion with WebAxe. So if you've never heard of WebAxe, it's an amazing repository of accessibility articles, information. Anytime like something cool comes out about accessibility, the guy that runs WebAxe usually puts it on there. So it's kind of like the Reddit of accessibility. So everybody should go to WebAxe. It's an amazing site. Somebody needs to tweet it. I'm not going to call out who should tweet it, but they know who they know who they are, and they know they should tweet it. And there's a little Easter egg about Axe. I'm not going to tell you exactly what it is, but you will know it when you listen to a screen reader pronounce Axe, spelled in this particular way. All right, so let's take a look at Axe. So let me pull up Firefox. That's not Axe. This is a before and after demo site. And I pre-pulled up Axe, so that way we would have 0 demo snafus. But the way you would do it is you just kind of go into your native inspector for your website or for your browser. So so I right-clicked, or whatever the equivalent is, inspect element. And when you install Axe, it shows up as this accessibility tab here in the bottom. And then you have two buttons. One's a giant one that says Analyze. One's a small one that says Analyze. I like clicking on the big one. And it gives you a list of the results, right? So same kind of thing. You push a button, and it says, here's some issues on this page. And this is one of the places where Axe differs on Firefox and on Chrome, partially because it's a Firefox thing. So if I go into an issue, I say these are my elements that must have sufficient contrast, and it gives me information about what the issue is. It tells me like what the issue is. It kind of gives me some suggestions on how to fix it. But I can go and highlight it, and we can kind of see that we have these like hash marks, vertically, and I can go up to that area. And then once I actually get to the item that has the issue, I have these other hash marks horizontally that kind of zero in to help you find that issue. It's not as easy to find it on Chrome because the native inspection highlight thingy, that's the technical term. It doesn't work as well on Chrome, but it's amazing on Firefox. So I would suggest if you're going to use Axe, use it on Firefox. The issues that are going to be reported are pretty much like 99.99% the same. So, yeah.
Do you have a question?
Oh, there's a question. Yes.
So with this, you showing it on a desktop, assuming that it also works on the mobile version, Firefox phone or anything like that?
So it's a great question. I've not actually tried running it on a phone. I imagine if you had something like I don't think it works on mobile. It might, but it would probably have to be like on the Firefox browser on mobile. You could try it out. I've never tried it out.
Just curious.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm curious. But
I mean, there's not that many of those phones.
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Please,
Yes, sir.
Axe is open source under the Mozilla license.
Mhm.
Is Wave also open source? And maybe you can speak to the other ones we can go through.
Yeah, so Wave is not open source, which is a downside of it in my opinion. But it is free. You don't have to pay anything to use it. Yeah, and Axe is open source. You can look at how they do everything. You can actually go online if you really want to. If you just ask me how you can do it, and like you can go in an online chat where the developers hang out, and if you have any questions about Axe, you can ask them there. You can axe them there, and they will maybe get back to you. All right, so this is Axe, right? It gives you the information. One of the cool things about it. Another thing is, so the company that makes this is one of the big accessibility consulting companies. And so for every one of these issues, they have this more info link here. If you click on it, it takes you to another page, which I've noticed starts kind of putting you here in the inspector. It used to show up in the main, like in a new tab. I don't know why it does this now. But it has a lot of details about like what this rule is, how it works. Kind of gives you the algorithm in simple terms, tells you why this is an important thing, like what populations of people might be affected, kind of gives you some guidance on how to fix it, right? So it's a lot more than just like finding the issues, it also kind of does some guidance on how you can address them. All right, so that's Axe. The next tool we're looking at is the Accessibility Developer Tools. So this is a Google tool, and it's a good tool. It does the same thing that like everything else does. When you install it, it's a Google tool. So of course it's on Chrome. What it does, similar to Axe, oh, not this page. Let me get rid of this. So you right click, you go to inspect. This time though, it's not going to be under like accessibility. It's going to be one of the audits. So the Google tools give you a lot of audits. By default, it doesn't have the accessibility one. Once you install the plugin, it'll add this accessibility audit, and you can run this audit, and it'll give you a list of results, similar to the other tools that we're looking at. You click a button, you get results. Additionally, you can get accessibility property about a particular part of the page. This part of it, where you like click the button, you get the results. I think other tools kind of do it better than developer tools because some of their rules are lacking. Some of their documentation is lacking for like how do you fix issues, all that stuff. But my favorite thing, my absolute favorite thing about this tool is, so for instance, I know that this Free Penguins text has bad contrast. So if I inspect this element, So this is used for developers. I know some of you non-developers is going way over your head, but hopefully you can follow along. So this is showing me the code for this section that I just kind of inspected. This is free penguin section, right? So just kind of, so you have an idea what's going on. And I can go to the accessibility properties, or what? Oh no, it's down here. I can go to the accessibility properties for this node, and it gives me this information. So I know it has poor contrast, so it's saying the contrast ratio is 3.8, which is below what it should be, which is 4.5. And it gives me this little swatch saying, here's a demonstration of the foreground color to the background color. Then it says, if you want to meet this, if you want this text to meet the guidelines, contrast, I said that horribly. If you want this text to have good contrast by meeting the guidelines, it needs to have at least, use these hex values, which represent the colors, and it'll look like this. So this swatch over here represents what it would look like with meeting that guideline. It'll tell you exactly what the ratio it's going to meet is. And so you can even go and click on this, and, well, we can't see it. Let me move this over. If I click on this swatch, it'll actually apply those colors to the text. It's a very subtle change, so I'm sure nobody can tell the change. I can't tell the change even on this machine. With this blown out projector, you're not going to be able to tell it. There's another question in the back. Yes?
Yeah. So how does it know what the contrast ratio is? Is it based on just on the content itself, or is it also on what the browser and device that's being displayed on? Because I would think that those impact with the contrast actually.
So it doesn't really, I don't think it considers the device it's being displayed on, but part of that calculation is, so there's a few factors, which I was going to get to, but thank you very much for bringing it up now. Great segue. So the contrast matters on the size of the text, right? So larger text doesn't need to have as high of a contrast ratio, but the tool will check to see whether it qualifies as large text or small text. Because there's lots of math that goes behind figuring out whether it is small or large text. And I love tools that do things for me, so I don't have to know the math and figure it out myself, right? So if you're doing like a manual check using a tool where you like just do a teardrop or a color picker on like this color and a color dropper on this picker, that's only getting you what the color contrast ratio is. It doesn't tell you what the size of the text is, so you know which color contrast ratio to apply. But this tool, as well as the Axe tool, will do the calculations for you, so you don't have to know anything. I don't know anything. So it'll show you at the AA level and at the AAA level. Let me see if I can, so everybody kind of look at this free penguins text. Let me see if I can just kind of like make it a little bit larger, so it might be easier. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch between the inaccessible one and the accessible one. So accessible, or this is AAA, so it's a really high contrast ratio. And then to the lowest one. It's a very subtle change. Highest, lowest. It's a very subtle change. Yes, question?
Piggybacking on that, does it also do it if you have it on an image? Although I know you're not supposed to technically do that, but if you have text on an image.
So yeah, so that's one of the places where tools will have false positives. When you have text that's over an image, because the way that the tool calculates what the background color is because it knows from the code what background color should be there. But if there's an image that's the background, the tool has no way of knowing what color is behind the particular text. So no, this one doesn't. And which is, I think, probably why they give you the swatch, so that you can see what the tool thinks is the foreground and background color. So that's an excellent question. So if you're looking at something that reports as an error, it's over an image, you can say this background color it says is not the same as on the image. I know this is a false positive. Another question in the back.
So it doesn't actually, it gives you the swatch, but it's whatever sampling of the swatch.
Well, so the swatch is, so there's a way in JavaScript that you can say, hey, for this text, tell me what the color is, what the foreground color, what the color of this text is. And then for this text, tell me what the background color is. So that's where it's getting that information from.
But in order to correct this,
Uh-huh.
you would actually have to go into Photoshop or something.
Oh, yeah. So whoever does the code for this page would have to go in and make the change. So but these calculations here, the recommendations for the good colors to use, Alice Boxhole put these together from Google, and she did the legwork and she has a presentation that I don't understand that explains how she came up with these recommended colors. That's a very intelligent way of doing it using color theory that I don't understand. So like I said, I love it when tools do things that I don't know how to do. All right, and this is pretty much like, this is one of like the things I've always wanted in accessibility. I'm like, there needs to be a good way of like giving a recommendation of what the colors should be. And Alice made it. She makes all of my accessibility dreams come true.
We want that tweeted?
All right, going to the next tool. All right, so now we're going to my personal favorite tool, which is the A-Inspector. So so real quick warning, this isn't necessarily the best tool for absolute beginners, but I love this tool as an accessibility professional. It's very thorough, it's very accessible. So the other tools that we kind of went over, they're accessible, but the Google Accessibility Developer tools, it integrates into the inspector. Same thing with Firefox, or same thing with Axe for Firefox. And getting into the inspector, like with keyboard, it's not the easiest thing in the world, like just kind of navigating around in it. And then especially like with a screen reader, it's not a pleasant experience, but it can be done. But with this tool, it's not a bad experience at all for keyboard. This one is only for Firefox, which is a little bit of a downside, but everybody always uses multiple browsers, so it's not really a downside. It's open source-ish because like it's not closed, and they used to have the source available, but I wasn't able to find a recent version of the code. It's not a huge deal. Like I said, it's still freely available. Like all this stuff is free. Oh yeah, and it seems to over-report things that most accessibility consultants and professionals would consider like, this is a best practice, as in you should be doing this. It says, oh no, you're not doing this, that's an error. So don't pay too much attention to what A-Inspector says is an error, is a warning. They always have like 3 levels, like warning, error, I don't know, whatever. There's bad, sort of bad, not so bad. That doesn't matter. All right, so let's look at the A-Inspector. So I pulled this up already before. Where's that? It's this one. So on the left side, we have the sidebar with the A-Inspector results. Oh yeah, so this one has, V is violations, that's what it is. W is warnings. And then they have MC, which is part of why I love it, which is manual checks. It doesn't just say like, oh, the computer said that this is an issue, or the computer, it could be an issue, so we're gonna say it's an issue. The manual checks are, hey, here's some things that you should check. Which is, the part where, as an accessibility professional, I love it, because like I know how to say, I know whether or not something is a false positive or could be a false positive, or something can't be checked with an automated tool. And so the places where I would kind of do that, like they're already kind of checking like, oh, this is something you need to check manually. And that's great. All right, so let's take a look. So we have all these numbers, we have this table here. What does all this mean? So let's look at images, because it's a little easier to understand than some of the other stuff. So I can see the details for images. And there's one violation: an image must have an alt text. So if I click on this, it should show me it, but it's not. So I say highlight the violations and warnings. And so it's going to highlight all the places where there's violations and warnings for this image rule. All right, so it's kind of the same thing with Wave, where it's going to show you all this stuff. I can go back. Oh, and actually, yeah, it gives you all this information in the left sidebar. It tells you about the definition of it, action for it, what the purpose of alt text is. It gives you a lot of information that, so this is part of why it's good for newer people, or why it's good in general for people that know a little bit, because it gives you a lot of explanation and a lot of information. It's amazing stuff. It has lots of links. Look at all this stuff. There's so much cool stuff in here. I love this tool. I caveated it with I love it, so I can gush on it. And then these manual checks. Alt text must summarize the purpose, right? So this is one of the places where the tools can only take you so far, right? So a tool can check, does this image have an alt attribute? Is the alt attribute empty, or is the alt attribute filled with text? That's as far as the computers can do. The computers can't say, is the alt attribute used for this image applicable to this image? So the example that she gave earlier with like the dog that was barking and just said like dog 1, 2, 3, 4, that's bad alt text, but a computer can't tell that. But it says, But this tool says, hey, this is alt text that needs to be checked with an image. Make sure that it matches, right? So it's a lot of great guidance for people that are really kind of getting into accessibility testing, and that's part of why I love this tool. Yes, question in the back.
Yeah, so the labeling too, right? I mean, it could be a picture of a light bulb with dashes, but if you're describing it as a light bulb with dashes out of it, it's not really what should the label. It should put out
Exactly.
ideas or something.
Exactly. Perfect. Yeah. So yeah, and this is what I love about the tools is the manual guidance, right? Because all the tools they do the checks, they do the similar checks, they do them in the similar way, but this tool goes above and beyond and says, not only do you have to do that, like you also have to do all this other manual stuff. And like you could probably get somebody that doesn't really know a ton about like coding and all the details of of accessibility testing. They just know a little bit, and you can just say go through, run the A inspector and go through each of these sections, and look at the violations, look at all the manual checks, ignore the NAs because they're not applicable, and just kind of see whether or not this stuff makes sense. Create an issue like that you're going in your report if it fails, and don't if it doesn't, right? Like this could potentially like guide somebody through like a full manual check of a site. I think I've never tried it. I'd like somebody to try it and then tell me so I don't have to do it. But yeah, it's my favorite tool, and it's open like everything else, or it's free at the very least. How am I doing on time?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. All right, I'm pretty much done. So, any questions? Question in the back.
Yeah, so someone said to me that it only captures, tools generally capture a small percentage, maybe 15% of all the issues.
Yeah,
What happens to the other 80% or more or something?
I mean, nothing happens to them. I mean, they're still there. They just don't get caught by automated tools. So I'll go a little bit off script, and let me see if I can find this thing. Where is it at? Tools. I'm not gonna go off script. I created a table of several different automated tools that I did a different presentation on, and I went painstakingly through and said each of these tools checks for these guidelines, and there's a giant table with lots of information. So kind of summarizing it from top of my head, it's like at best they can get maybe like 20s to 40s, right? Like it's a kind of big range. 20 to 40% of all the guidelines. So if you're gonna make a giant list of all the guidelines, you'd have like 70-ish checkpoints to check for. So of those 70-ish, you're gonna have a smaller percentage that can actually be found by automated tools. But that doesn't mean that it's useless. Automated tools find the issues that are very important, that happen probably more frequently than some of the other other failings that people make. So automated tool checking is amazing. That's why all the big companies do it. Question?
No, just more comment on automated tools. As you said, even though they might not pick up a lot of these pick up the low-hanging fruit that are so easy to fix, and that frees up developers and others to concentrate on the bigger items, right? The mobiles and all those other things that the tools don't pick up. So I agree with you basically with being a necessary part of any good accessibility process.
Very good point, stranger in the back, who I don't know.
We just got an interesting reaction from Alex. Okay.
All right, well, thank you all very much, and have a great rest of your day at camp.